Alright guys, this is the entire Tim Cheese lore, so please bear with me. So the story begins with three lifelong best friends, John Pork, Tim Cheese, and Simon Claw. So all three of these dudes are growing up in the trenches, and the only one who manages to break generational poverty is John Pork, and so he becomes successful and gains a lavish lifestyle, while Tim Cheese and Simon Claw are still living in poverty. Now, unbeknownst to anyone, Tim Cheese is secretly collaborating with Mafia boss Hank Grizzle. And at this point in the story, Tim Cheese and Hank Grizzle are tight, like they're tight. Because if we're being honest, Hank Grizzle is the only reason why Tim Cheese isn't still living in the dirt. But that's beside the point. Eventually, Tim Cheese ends up taking everything from Hank Grizzle. He takes his empire, he takes his money, he takes everything. So he essentially just flat out betrays Hank Grizzle and takes everything from him. Meanwhile, Tim Cheese's wife, Tina Cheese, is secretly cheating on him with John Pork. And so when Tim Cheese finds out about this, it's essentially the last straw. I mean, think about it. John Pork betrayed him and Simon Claw at a young age. He's now incredibly rich, incredibly wealthy. And he's world famous, and the last straw was his wife cheating on him with John Pork. I mean that's the last straw. So finally, Tim Cheese decides, you know what? I'm gonna f***ing kill this guy. So he ends up collaborating with Bombardino Cocodrilo, who would eventually end up being known as the mastermind behind the murder of John Pork. The night John Pork gets murdered, the only witness of the murder is Pingu. Now, there is some speculation that Pingu might have been the one that murdered John Pork and just framed Tim Cheese, but the evidence points to, no, that's not the case. Tim Cheese most definitely murdered John Pork. So at this point, our top agents who are trying to track down Tim Cheese are Agent 5.5 and Marvin Beak. Other individuals who are involved in tracking down Tim Cheese include Bob Bacon, John Pork's cousin, Justin Cheddar, Sergeant Gorilla Glazer, who has a team of assassins including Ricky Roo, Kinky Crow, and K9 Killer. Now, we're not even halfway through the list of people who are trying to take out Tim Cheese. Like, there are literally dozens of entities trying to take this dude out. Meanwhile, the people on Tim Cheese's team include his lifelong best friend, Simon Claw, and George Bass. Obviously, Bombardino Cocodrilo is on Tim Cheese's team, but he sort of stays in the shadows, so, you know, he's kind of irrelevant. The most recent event in the Tim Cheese lore is Bob Bacon being assassinated by George Bass. And George Bass says that his next target is Marvin Beak.